When I was a little boy, I experienced childhood trauma. In this video, I'm going to share with you some information on how unhealed childhood trauma affects you as an adult, and some more of my own childhood trauma experience. This is Mama Trauma Part 2. Hi there, my name is Mark. I'm a pastor and professional counselor who also struggles with anxiety and panic. Welcome to my channel. Less than stressed. So in part 1 of this video about childhood trauma, I shared with you what I remembered about my life before my trauma, a little bit of my experience with childhood trauma, and what childhood trauma is. And we looked at the 10 adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, that are there. And if you haven't watched that video, and you want to watch these in order, I'll put the video link in the description for you. And maybe it'll even come up on here. I don't know. We'll see what happens there. So before I begin, I want to give you a trigger warning. Some things I'm going to talk about in my trauma experience include alcoholism, emotional neglect, and a person's attempt to unalive themselves. Now, if you know this may trigger a negative response in you, it may be best not to watch this next section, or at the very least, proceed with caution. But before I continue my trauma story, I'm just going to give you a real quick review of what I shared in the first video. And I said, for context, my mom was a good person, right? She was a kind person with a good heart, but she chose alcohol to deal with her mental health issues. And this, unfortunately, led to a lot of poor decisions on her part when it came to taking care of me. And then I talked about how the first time my mom did something that made me feel unsafe, when she just fell on the floor one day after dinner. First time her mental illness actually negatively affected me. I also talked about when I started kindergarten, how I had afternoon kindergarten and pickup was like 3:30. My mom was always late. And I knew she was late because I would watch all the kids go home and be picked up, and then the teachers and whatnot. And so I said, as a 5-year-old, I didn't have the capacity to understand what was going on or why she was late, but I do remember feeling very uneasy and anxious. So, because everyone got to go home but not me. And then I said, to be clear, I wasn't left there overnight, but there were times where I was probably waiting like 30 minutes to an hour to get picked up. And I also said that the main reason why my mom was late picking me up is because, number one, she didn't have a car, so she had to use a cab. And number two, she was out at the local bars drinking and lost track of time. So a lot of times, many times, when my mom would pick me up, instead of going home, we'd go right to the bars. She'd take me with her. I said, can you imagine a 5-year-old hanging out at a bar all night? It was me, though. Even though not being picked up on time in kindergarten made me feel a little abandoned and not important, I would say that I was most traumatized by what happened when my mom did take me home after the bars. Because sometimes we would stay at the bars till late at night, and sometimes we'd stay just an hour or two. But when we did get home, my mom would be drunk, and I never knew what version of drunk mom, I'm going to call her, I would get from day to day. So there's a couple different versions. There was sleeping drunk mom. Sometimes my mom would fall asleep in her bed, and yeah, I would be left alone to fend for myself, but that was better than the other versions of drunk mom, that's for sure. There was also crying drunk mom. Sometimes after the bar, my mom would come home, lay in her bed, and she'd just cry most of the night. And she'd yell out how she missed her dad. And of course, me, being an empathetic little 5-year-old, I wanted, I couldn't stand to hear her cry. I wanted to help her. So I would try to go to her side and help her and calm her down and, get her to stop crying. And there's another version of drunk mom I want to talk about, but we'll get to that in a minute. I just want to share with you a sad memory that I have. And, again, I've worked through all this, so it's okay. But I definitely remember one night after the bar, my mom took me to a hotel in downtown Scranton. Well, she She was with some guy from the bar who was not my dad, and I remember that the hotel room had two beds, one for me to sleep in, and one for my mom and the other dude. Of course, I don't know if they were sleeping, but anyway, the only other thing I remember about that night was that I woke up in the middle of the night. I was very thirsty. So I went over to the bed where my mom was and the other dude were sleeping, and I told her I was thirsty. So she got up, rinsed out an empty beer can, filled it with water, and gave it to me to drink out of. And when I took a sip, I actually remember tasting a tinge of beer on the can. It wasn't the greatest taste, but I can remember that. So, oh yeah, that was that kind of memory. Not the greatest, but it was what it was, right? So, the last version of Drunk Mom that I remember is the attempt at unaliving herself, Drunk Mom. Unfortunately, I watched my mom try to do this at least 3 times that I can remember. And each time was a different method, and each time I was extremely terrified. If I had to guess where the feelings of terror came from when I had my worst panic attacks, I would say it would be from witnessing these events. And yeah, I can recall 3 different methods that she tried. And yeah, I thought about sharing them, but I don't think it's necessary to share specifics. So, and YouTube probably wouldn't like that either. So, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave it at that. And I want to say this, that my mom's attempts were unsuccessful, thank God. However, when you're a 5 or 6 year old whose sense of safety and well being is dependent on your mom, and she does this, yeah, it's terrifying to the child, and it basically completely shatters your world and sense of safety, especially as a little kid, because you feel helpless. You are basically helpless. I'm a 5, 6 year old kid. I can't overpower my mom or do anything to stop her. So you watch, your mom do what she do. You get terrorized, and you dissociate, because that is what happens when you experience something that is so extremely traumatizing. That's a big part of my story. We having fun yet? Well, I share this because I just want people to know that they're not alone. And I hear you. I've been through the trauma too, and so I just hopefully you can find some hope out of that. Okay. So what I want to do now is kind of share what unhealed trauma looks like in an adult, in case you've been through your own trauma and you haven't really worked on it. So we're going to take a few minutes to talk about that. And first, I'll say this, that unhealed trauma really reshapes your nervous system. And it kind of leaves you in this almost chronic state of fight, flight, or freeze. And you can go through all three, and it really leaves you what's called dysregulated. We'll talk about that in a minute. So if a child experiences prolonged or repeated trauma, such as childhood abuse over and over and domestic violence, they usually develop what's called complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD. And CPTSD includes all the standard PTSD symptoms alongside some severe disruptions in emotional regulation, interpersonal relationships, and a negative sense of self. So with CPTSD, the symptoms are generally grouped into 2 primary categories. You have your core post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, your core PTSD symptoms, and your disturbances in self-organization, what's called DSO. So let's look at the first category, and this is core PTSD symptoms. These are the very common ones that you would get when you experience any kind of prolonged trauma, or any kind of trauma for that matter. First of all, number one is intrusive thoughts. And don't mind me, I'm going to read some of this just to make it simple. So intrusive thoughts are recurring unwanted memories, nightmares, or emotional flashbacks where you relive the feelings from the trauma without necessarily seeing the images. So yeah, so you can have unwanted memories, unwanted dreams, and you could just have these emotional flashbacks where something happens in your life, it triggers a strong emotion, and you're like, where did that come from? and that's what was happening with my panic attacks. I think, well, it just comes out of the blue, and it really messes you up. There's also number two, avoidance, which is you actively avoid the places, the people, or the activities that trigger memories of the traumatic event. So on one of my older videos, if you remember when I had my really bad panic attacks during the middle of the day in Philadelphia, I didn't want the sun shining in on my in my room, so I kind of put the blinds up all the time. So that's back in that video. So that's number two. Number three is hyperarousal, which is you're in this kind of persistent state of high alert. You feel jumpy, or you're easily startled, right? Or you just have trouble sleeping and concentrating. And that's kind of my baseline for a long time. This hyperarousal, terrible, terrible concentrator in school. Could not concentrate on nothing. Never knew why. A lot of kids get diagnosed with ADHD when maybe what's really happening is they have PTSD symptoms, unhealed, and they don't know about it. So you have that, and then four, dissociation, which is just really feeling detached from reality. That's also could be that part could be called disrealization, or you dissociate, you feel detached from your thoughts, or even your physical body, almost like you're watching life kind of happen outside your body. All right, so those are the PTSD symptoms, core symptoms. Here is the second category, which would be considered disturbances in self-organization. And these are just basically how you see yourself and how you deal with relationships and your own emotional well-being. So you have four of them. The first one is emotional dysregulation, and this could be you have difficulty controlling your emotions, right? Which this can manifest as explosive anger, going off the handle, persistent sadness, or even feeling emotionally numb. So for a long time, I just have this persistent kind of anxiety and sadness, and yeah, that's if you always feel like that, that's could very well be from unhealed childhood trauma. And number two, you have a negative self concept where you just either you feel persistent feelings of shame, or you feel worthless, or even believing that you're permanently damaged. Like, there's something wrong with me. It's negative self image. Got that too. Again, you got to keep working on this stuff. I know. Relationship difficulties where you just struggle to trust others, right? You feel constantly let down by them, or you isolate yourself from friends or family for a sense of reality. Or there could be the time when like you're too clingy, right? And you get dependent or codependent on others. You go that way. And then there's physical and behavioral symptoms. You may have what's called somatic symptoms like unexplained aches and pains, or risky self-destructive behavior. And a lot of times people use substances to cope with the pain. So that's where a lot of addiction comes from, drug and alcohol addiction. Like my mom, that's what she did. That's all they knew back then. So let me talk about some of the risky or self-destructive behaviors, because the drug and alcohol abuse, that's self-explanatory. So one of them would be self-harm, which became real popular in the last 20 some years or so. Risky sexual behavior, dangerous driving, or thrill seeking, or even interpersonal sabotage. So we may talk more about these type of things as again in other videos to see how it goes, but I'm throwing that out there. So, if you're experiencing any of those symptoms, the core symptoms or the DSO symptoms, I want you to know that there's help out there for you. There's hope. There's specialized trauma therapies, like it's called EMDR. It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And there's also trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy, TFCBT, which are highly effective. And I do a little bit of the cognitive stuff myself, and I do the dialectic behavioral therapy, which is helpful too. So, yeah, there's a lot of therapies now that can help. So it really really is all about you taking that first step to get the help. So I hope this information about complex PTSD has been helpful to you.
Hey, Harry's here.
Harry's here? Oh, all right. Let him in. Oh boy, my friend Harry's here. You're in for a real treat. What are you doing, Mark? Oh, hi, Harry. Sorry. I'm just finishing up my latest video for YouTube. Oh, cool. Can I see? Sure. Don't get too close. So what brings you over, bud? Well, my mom wanted me to talk to you. My pet hamster, little Mikey, died the other day. Oh, Harry, I'm so sorry to hear about that. How you doing? I don't know. My mom says I'm sleeping a lot, and I'm grumpy. And my neighbor brought over a plate of cookies the other day, and I ate all of them. What? Oh boy. How many cookies were there? 12, I think. You ate 12 cookies? I'm going to hold you still here for a minute. Yeah, just had one. I kept eating them one after the other. So, are you feeling sad about the loss of little Mikey? Yeah. Some days are better than others. I'm sad. Oh, sounds like you're experiencing those normal symptoms of grief. You know, I was actually going to do my next video on grief. Would you like to help me with that? Yeah, okay. All right, great. Let me close out this video and we'll talk some more, all right? Okay. So you heard it here. My friend Harry's going to help me with my next video about grief. So be on the lookout for that one. Until I see you again, take care of yourself and have a blessed day. Yeah. Have a blessed day. All right, Harry.